Carrie Langston separated soon after his birth, and his father moved to Mexico. Now, while Hughes's mother moved around during his youth, Hughes was raised primarily by his maternal grandmother, Mary, until she died. Because his mother traveled a lot to find work and was often absent, his grandmother raised Hughes until he was 12. His childhood was lonely. He often occupied himself with books. It was Hughes's grandmother, a great storyteller, who transferred to him her love of literature and the importance of becoming educated. From that point, he went to live with his mother and stepfather, and they moved to several cities before eventually settling in Cleveland, Ohio, as his stepfather found work in the steel mills here. It was during this time that Hughes first began to write poetry, and that one of his teachers at Central High School first introduced him to the poetry of Carl Sandburg, Paul Laurence Dunbar, and Walt Whitman, who Hughes would later cite as primary influences.
Hughes was also a regular contributor to his school's literary magazine, was editor of his school yearbook, and frequently submitted to other poetry magazines. It was during his time in Central that he became acquainted with Roscoe and Rowena Jelloff. They had just recently founded Caramel House, a theater and a center for arts education, especially for the young people in the neighborhood. He began taking classes after school and established a relationship with Caramel House and the Jelloffs that endured throughout the entire life. For many years, Hughes was a familiar face at Caramel, where he eventually taught art classes while still in high school. He wrote his first play at Caramel, The Golden Piece, in 1921. He wrote and debuted several other works at Caramel. Hughes also became a member of the Caramel Players, a theatrical troupe. Hughes said,
"It is a cultural shame that a great country like America, with 20 million people of color, have no primarily serious colored theater. There isn't. Caramel is the very nearest thing to it. My feeling is not only should a Negro theater, if we want to use that term, do plays by and about Negroes, but it should do plays slanted toward the community in which it exists. It should be in a primarily Negro community, since that is the way our racial life in America is still. It should not be a theater that should be afraid to do Negro folk plays about people who are perhaps not very well educated, because some of the intellectuals, or intellectuals in quotes, are ashamed of such material."
Rowena Jelloff produced a number of his plays, including the premiere of When the Jack Hollers in 1936, Troubled Island in 1936, and Joy to My Soul, and the holiday celebration Black Nativity. It is a staple of the Caramel House repertory to this day. And a side note, although Hughes traveled the world and moved to New York's Harlem neighborhood as an adult, he never forgot Cleveland or Caramel. He continued to visit Caramel throughout his life as he saw inspiration for his writings, and even penned a poem celebrating his long-time special relationship to Russell and Rowena Jelloff. Caramel's library is furnished with 2 large wooden tables engraved with African carving, and the tables were commissioned by Hughes.
Hughes is particularly known for his insightful, colorful portrayals of Black life in America from the 20s through the 60s. He wrote novels, short stories, and plays, as well as poetry, and is also well known for his engagement with the world of jazz and the influence it had on his writing. His life and work were enormously important in shaping the artistic contributions of the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s. Unlike other notable Black poets of the period, Hughes refused to differentiate between his personal experience and the common experience of Black America. He wanted to tell the stories of his people in ways that reflected their actual culture, including both their suffering and their love of music, laughter, and language itself. One of his most striking poems was surely based upon his own mother, as she struggled after her divorce to find work in a variety of cities in order to support herself and her young son.
Mother to son. Well, son, life for me ain't been no crystal stairs. It's had tacks in it, and splinters, and boards torn up, and places with no carpet on the floor. Bare. But all the time, I've been a climbing on, and reaching landings, and turning corners, and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you turn back. Don't you sit down on them steps, 'cause you find it kind of hard. Don't you fall now, for I still going, honey. I still climbing. And life for me ain't been no crystal stair.